Hey, Ian here, Fantastic Dimensions. This is a VR to Sam at Chalice and Chains. Sam, I watched your little channel update, kind of your thank you and all that about your recent Fate actual plays and stuff. I'm glad they went well for you. You had asked in that video about people's tips and ideas and stuff for running horror and investigation type games. I've run a few of these and I've been pretty successful with them, I guess, just based on the feedback I've gotten from my players and a few people who've also watched the videos that weren't in the games. My advice to you would be, first, if possible, have a look at some published materials. A great source would be Call of Cthulhu, because it's probably the best, most well known. It's the most popular, I think, horror investigation game out there. Actually, most of the horror investigation games that I've run, at least recently, have come from published materials, and they were in Call of Cthulhu. I ran one out of the D20 Call of Cthulhu book. The core book had an adventure in there called The End of Paradise, I think it's called, or Welcome to Paradise, something like that. I think it's called The End of Paradise. And then there's another one that I ran for a couple of the same guys and a few others. It was actually about a 3-parter that I ran. It was called, I'm trying to remember the name, I can't recall right now, but I do know it's in a campaign book called Nocturnum. And it was the first chapter, basically, of that book. It's really, really good. Have a look at some of those if you can, those published materials, and just see how they're laid out, and draw some inspiration from that. Maybe if you can, try to get in and play in some horror games or investigation games, or ideally horror and investigation, so you can get a feel for what you enjoy as a player, and then you can try and recreate that to some extent for your own players when you're running your own game. I think as far as specific tips, what I can tell you is, don't let it get too dull. This, it sounds like a big negative, but because investigation can, depending on how it's handled, it can be a bit droll, you know what I mean? It can be just pouring through libraries, or chasing after red herrings, or, interviewing, witnesses over and over again, etc., etc., etc. Try to keep things on track. It's okay to use red herrings and things of that sort. In fact, it might enhance the experience to some extent, but I wouldn't overuse them. I think, discretion and always less is more. A little bit here and there is great, but if you overdo it, it just kind of becomes, I'll go talk to this guy, but is it going to be another dead end? Is it another, distraction? So don't overdo it, because you don't want your players to become jaded or bored with the game. Especially if you're running a one-shot, I suppose you're going to be dealing with a limited time frame anyway. So you'll want to, I think, maybe I'm wrong in this, and I'd be interested if anybody else responds to your question, but I think you want to have something in place so that if the players miss a glaring clue that's right in front of them, and it could be something as simple as a dice roll gone wrong, so they missed out on something. Try to make sure that a dice roll doesn't, sideline the entire game, or even end the investigation. Like you failed a roll looking through that book, so you missed a vital clue, and you ended up not being able to stop the evil ritual, and so the bad guys won after you continued to investigate for another hour. That would be a pretty horrible way to end an investigation. Now, I'm not saying that the players should win and should solve every mystery and should, especially when you're playing a game like Call of Cthulhu. In fact, I think the exception in my games anyway has been that the players actually totally save the day and, overcome the darkness. A lot of times in my games, it seems anyway, the darkness has always overcome in one way or another. So, take that as you will. Make it interesting, make it challenging, but again, like I said, don't let your players get bored and just bummed out because they rolled a 1 on their investigation check or whatever. So, other tips and tricks. Well, I've already done a video recently on GMing horror games. So if you want to check that out on my channel, you'll find it there. It's I think I called it a GM Insight, GMing horror games or something like that. I gave a few tips on there on what I think works for actually just being a GM in a horror scenario, how to kind of creep up the creepiness, you know. So yeah, so I wish you luck, Sam. I'm glad you're in this community. I'm enjoying your videos. I'm watching your Fate games. I haven't finished them yet, but you know, it's great to have you here, and great to see you running games, and that you're passionate and interested. So I look forward to seeing much more from you in the future. I wish you all the luck, all the best, and hopefully you get a few more people chiming in here that have more experience and probably better ideas, especially with the investigative side of things, than I do. So in the meantime, all the best, Sam, and I'll see you at the gaming table.